brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, this for my dogs from the east to the west side. You rockin' brown and orange with me, baby. Let's ride. Represent the land, let them know. Tell them, here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. I'm Ali Heisel, coming at you live from Pensacola, Florida. Joined with me, as always, beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. We've got Dustin. Dustin, before I turn it over to you and ask how you're doing, just a quick notice. I was just notified by our streaming service here that we are not live on Twitter tonight. We will have to update our Twitter platform to be able to do so. So if you typically join us from Twitter, one, you're not hearing my message right now, but we will get that figured out here. Unfortunately, not during the show, but towards the end of this evening. Hopefully we can have that out to you guys. But Dustin, how's it going?
Good, Ali. I'm actually it's interesting, this building. You've been down around here, but the 9, the big hotel, it's a residential and a hotel. In the base of that to the right is what's called the Vault. The Vault is a very cool turn of the century bank that was in Cleveland. And literally you go from room to room, like you and David would love this place. It's like a very speakeasy feel, kind of different rooms, 20s theme. It's just super cool. You can go to all these different bars. It looked like there was a wedding party in here. You might know something a little bit about that. Taking some pictures, walking through here right before the show started. But super cool, right down here in Cleveland on 9th Street. But I was like, it'd be kind of cool. And Ali, I haven't even thrown this at you, but I'm thinking we could have some fun segments going forward. That is, where is Dustin in Cleveland today? Like we could kind of do like a road show. Where is Dustin today? I'm at the Vault. As you can see, that is a huge vault right behind me. It goes back, and then there's multiple vaults. But I thought that'd be kind of cool. Like we can do the show like a road show. Where is he at tonight? Maybe I'm in Lakewood. Maybe I'm somewhere else. But maybe we're one of our sponsors. But it'd be a lot of fun to just do a road show. I thought that'd be kind of fun. But yeah, if you get a chance, folks, I did my birthday party on the rooftop up here. Ali, I learned that I am still very much a lightweight. And one person said to me, Dustin, all night, you had a drink in your hand all night. And I was like, yeah. And then I felt it till Monday. So I guess that's a good party if you feel it till Monday. I know. But I was like, maybe I should have maybe built my tolerance up because I'm not a huge drinker. I'm a social drinker. So
and hey, that's okay. You don't have to build your tolerance up to impress anybody. There's nothing wrong with not drinking or minimal drinking or something. There is nothing wrong with taking feel good the next day. Trust me, I don't ever, go too hard because I just don't like feeling like that. But anyways, thanks everybody for joining in. Look, it is July and there is nothing to talk about. Got a couple of things to go over that'll take 5-10 minutes, but then later on in the program maybe we'll have some fun. So if you've got any questions, comments, concerns, put them here in the comments. We'll try to get to them live on the program tonight. As always, we'll welcome David on here in just a few moments. Look, guys, this is the deadest that I've seen an NFL offseason in quite a while. Yes, we do have the whole Brandon Ayuk situation. We're going to talk about that and talk about some of the possible landing spots for Brandon Ayuk and some good fits, things like that. But, there's a couple of Browns things to talk about. Amari Cooper and Dustin Hopkins. That's it.
And JOK. And JOK, the rumblings of a new JOK extension.
Yes. So that's about it. Nothing crazy to talk about, but honestly, Dustin, I prefer it that way. We've had some off seasons before where it is every week talking about some insane stuff. And we're like, man, this team is just always, in the headlines. And that team, that was rough. That was rough. 2019 Cleveland Browns, Freddie Kitchens. That was tough. But nonetheless, it makes it hard.
I feel bad for Freddie Kitchens. I really do. I think he was put into a bad situation.
That whole thing just.
It's weird, right? It's weird. Like, oh, he gets along with Baker, and this will be a good fit, and then it's not a good fit. I don't know. It was weird. I agree.
It was weird. So we're gonna get into some of that, but just not a lot to talk about. And honestly, that's okay. It's refreshing, honestly, to kind of get creative with some of the segments and have a little bit of fun, but also be able to look at some other team situations like the 49ers and what they're going to do with Brandon Ayuk and know that unless he's going to be traded to the Cleveland Browns, which is a possibility. There's really not much to unpack, and it's not a whole stressful thing like, oh my God, what's Andrew Berry going to do? It's just kind of fun banner, honestly.
Yeah, I think David will have some fun stuff to talk about in the fact that Nick Chubb was videotaped doing his several. Yeah, and I was like, oh, there it is. There's the man that we thought he could be. So it'll be fun to see what David thinks with a guy doing that kind of weightlifting, what that means for his progress, because that's putting a lot of weight on things we don't want weight on, in my opinion, that obviously his body can take it or he wouldn't be doing it. So it'll be interesting with David's perspective.
Let's get into this. Let's go ahead and bring David on. Before we do that, here's a quick word from our friends over at Lorello Vineyards.
Here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Woof, woof.
Hello, welcome to Lorello Vineyards, Larry and Kim Lorello. We have a beautiful Here We Go Brownies wine that we would like to offer to you this season as we did last season. We have several other award-winning wines, lovely entertainment and events coming this summer. So come and see us, wine a bit, you'll feel better.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you at the Muni lot this fall. Go Browns.
All right, let's bring him on to the program. Dr. David Ullery, also live from Pensacola, Florida, just a couple of rooms over in the living room. David, what's going on?
Good evening. Hello, Ali and Dustin. How are you?
David, doctor, you look like you're just fresh off the golf course. With the whole, looks like he's having his best life.
Yeah, we haven't been able to golf down here yet, but we are hoping to soon. And the Open's on right now too. Well, early this morning, so definitely in golf mood right now.
Well, they have the Firestone here. Just this last weekend here in Cleveland, it was a big thing. Hanford and some of the folks I was gonna go, but it was my birthday, so I was like, no. But John Daly and some other folks were down there, so it was like I was like, I need to take in the Firestone some here because it looks like it's a really cool golf event to go to, and it's kind of it's right here in Akron, so it's right in the back.
Yeah,
Really cool. Nice to go to.
Yeah. David, let's get into it. I think the craziest thing that we've all seen in the past week is Nick Chubb squatting, I don't know, the weight of the world.
600 pounds. I think it was 600.
That was crazy. That was absolutely insane coming off of ACL surgery. So I know we talk, if we were to go back and take a look at all of the medical minute segments that we've done, David, I think majority of the conversation would be about Nick Chubb, right? And the progress of Nick Chubb, when he'll be back. But we've never talked about anything like this, Nick Chubb doing something totally superhuman at this point. So I'll turn it over to you. What were your thoughts on that clip?
Yeah, rightfully so. We've talked about him so much. He's the face of the franchise and such a valuable, important player. And so he did something pretty impressive by squatting over 500 pounds there. That's pretty remarkable. And I would say it's not that it's erratic or against what he should be doing, but certainly I saw it and my jaw hit the floor. And the minute I could show Ali, I said, "Oh my gosh, did you see this? Like, he literally is superhuman." And while I'm not surprised, obviously we know that he's a strong individual, and he's I think it was like 540 pounds, and he's squatted well over 600 prior to his injury. And so strength has never been an issue for him. But as you alluded to, Ali, doing this 8 months after multiple surgeries on a knee that was bent the wrong way very severely, it's pretty impressive and fascinating. But I would say it's for him and his progress and his expectations, it's on par. Strength is not the very last thing that you work on in ACL recovery. And so he's allowed to be doing this, and it's safe for him to do as long as he's met all the benchmarks leading up to this. Now, he's probably not doing much serious plyometrics, jumping and cutting, but I'm sure he's starting to work his way into that activity now. The exercises that he's doing, so a squat, think there's some exercises that we encourage and ones that we avoid after an ACL surgery while it's still healing. What he's doing with a squat is called a closed chain exercise. What that means is that his feet are connected to the ground or to something. They're not just dangling. And so closed chain exercises are a little bit more safe because they're compounded movements. You're activating multiple muscle groups, and you're not just straining one movement or one position or one muscle group. And so in doing so, it's protective, or at least it's not damaging to one specific ligament. And so things like squats, deadlifts, leg press, those are all what we call closed chain exercises. Now, open chain exercises are things like leg extensions, like the machine you sit in and you kick your legs up, or even a leg, like a leg flexion or a knee flexion where you kick back. Those are open chain exercises because your feet are not connected to anything. They're open, they're dangling. And so those are the ones that we definitely avoid early on after ACL surgery, because those are more isolated muscle groups. And, if you think about doing like a leg flexion exercise, as you're pushing against the weight's pushing back against your leg and pushing it forward, which is what the ACL is supposed to prevent it from doing. And so by doing that, you're putting strain on the ACL. Similarly with the leg extension exercise, as you're kicking your leg out, the weight's pushing back down against it and pushing the leg posterior or backwards, and it's straining certain ligaments. And so squatting like that, we encourage all of our athletes and I guess, sailors or Marines after surgery to get back into weightlifting as soon as they're comfortable, in a controlled and safe manner. And of course, he's made his progressions, but it's clear to see he hasn't lost that much strength, which is really impressive. And, seeing that, I thought, well, maybe there is actually a chance we see him suiting up earlier than expected. I know Mary Kay today wrote an article describing kind of where or what his classification is going to be heading into training camp. And he's going to be on the active / physically unable to perform list. And that's a good thing, because what that means is at any point he can be activated to participate in team drills. So he can be at practice, he can be doing his own rehab, but on that list, he cannot participate in team drills. But as soon as he's ready, they can clear him. And that means that he can be ready for the season if he is at that point. And so all those things are pointing in the right direction, and they're all signs of progression and progress and hope for what we can see or what we can expect to be, or what would be a remarkable comeback season.
David, we've talked about, you've talked about on this program, you don't expect to see Nick Chubb week 1. And if he is out there week 1, it's in a very limited role, right? They're not going to let him just go absolutely crazy, maybe the first portion of the season. But after having seen that video, does that kind of change your perspective on that? Do you think that we could see him come back and be Nick Chubb a little bit sooner than expected, or is this still kind of on par with what you were thinking initially?
It's tough to say. I would say it's I think a little bit more than I expected to see right now. And so I think that it is definitely swaying me or making me lean towards more the direction of, man, we could see him back sooner than I was expecting or anticipating. But again, I don't like to give out, hope or expectations or percentages and get fans excited and worked up and then be let down. At the end of the day, I try to be as realistic as possible, but squatting 540 pounds 8 months after ACL surgery doesn't seem quite realistic anyway, but it happened. And so I definitely think that this is a sign of him returning earlier than I would have anticipated him to. And that would be awesome. But at the same time, we want to make sure he returns when he's ready so he doesn't re-injure himself.
Well, and here's a question. Like, I think about just a normal individual, right? Like, you see soldiers, you see folks all the time. People in your field and, after they come off of surgery, I don't think they're going in the weight room and dropping 550 pounds and lifting that kind of weight. I mean, unless you're like a very big man, right? Like, that can physically. So my question, similar to Ali's, but my question is specifically, when you're in that position, you're putting a lot of pressure on those knees, right? So that was the first thing I was thinking was, oh my God, he's got all this weight on him and he's going down, and that put, because I've done lifts like that. That's a lot of pressure coming back up and going back down. I mean, you've got to have some kind of clearance from a doctor or multiple doctors that feel that he's able to do that, and B, and what, similar to what Ali was saying, what kind of like check the box moment did he have to have in his testing, if that makes sense, and going through this progression to have a doctor like yourself go, you know what, I don't want you doing that, but now a doctor clearly said, hey, let's give it a shot. Let's see if you can even muster or whatever. But what kind of box do you think he had to check to be able to do that? Because when I saw that, I was like, oh, that looks really risky, right? That was my first connotation, was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's doing this. I don't want him to like pop his knee out. I mean, that's where my mind went, right? So I'm just curious what you would see, because people love how you get into the minutia of the situation and say, okay, based on what I would see from somebody like a patient of mine, that's where I would have given the click, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a good question, just because you're right. Like, well, how does he get to that point? How does he get to that step in his rehab? And so, a lot of the major things, the big things that we look for to allow someone to go kind of full unrestricted weightlifting, which is essentially what he's doing right now, is full range of motion. So getting the leg all the way straight and then flexing it back as far as your body will allow. So 0 degrees of extension or flexion, and then bending it all the way to typically about 130 to 140 degrees of flexion. So certainly more than 90 degrees at a right angle, to be able to get your knee underneath you. We call that deep flexion. So that's certainly the first thing. Another thing is to make sure there's no significant swelling. We want swelling to be clear, and we don't want that to be an issue because that can limit your range of motion too, and it can be a sign of whether the body's still healing or something else going on. So another thing that we look for is to make sure there's no swelling of the knee joint itself anymore. Just being able to walk normally, walk without a limp, have a normal gait, and be able to take steps and not have any issues with that. Go up and down stairs, even some straight line running. That's probably a little bit of involved in the decision making here. And the caveat being all of these things should be pain-free too. Certainly there's some soreness. You'll have some muscle soreness. But in doing these activities, they need to be pain-free for you to be able to make the next step in your rehab and your progression. And then, typically we start our guys out with either really, really light weights or cables or pulleys or even rubber bands, and making sure that they can do light resistance without weight. And as soon as they hit that mark without weight, we start increasing it. And so there's a number of things that go into it, and really the physical therapists are the ones that are doing this day in and day out and have such a key role in rehab after ACL surgery. But those are the big things, making sure you have a full range of motion. You can walk normally without any pain or limping. You can do a squat without any weight and get up and down without pain. Obviously that's, if you can simulate the exercise, then that's a good sign that you can do it with weight. And then just making sure that you're able to do some straight line running and do some lighter resistance exercises without pain. Those are the big things. And I mean, he certainly didn't start out right away at 500 pounds. He started with lighter exercises, lighter machines, or lighter weights, and graduated. But with someone who has as much muscle strength as he does, getting back to where he was right now, clearly did not take that long, because muscles do have memory. I mean, muscle memory, it's a term for a reason, and we're able to make gains back to our baseline after an injury fairly quickly compared to someone who has never had that much strength and is trying to build up towards it. So there's a number of check boxes, but those are the big ones that we look out for to make sure we can say, hey, you've hit all these marks, okay to start increasing your weight and do what's comfortable. And I always tell my patients, like, if you do something and it hurts, where it's actually painful or it feels like unstable or unsteady, then stop. Back off for a week, try again with a lighter weight. But if it's just a muscle soreness, kind of an achiness, or just more of a fatigue thing, as long as you can do it with proper form, keep going. Just because you have to make progress and you got to push yourself in this rehab, just because it takes a lot to get the body back to where it needs to be.
Well, to your point at the end of the day, you want to.
I just want to tell you about our friends over at Stadium Mustard. If you don't have Stadium Mustard in your kitchen this season, you're doing it wrong. The iconic brand, the iconic taste, beloved from ballparks to backyards and everywhere in between. Stadium Mustard is a smooth brown mustard rich in both taste and tradition. By the way, it's loved by millions. So head on over to stadiummustard.com to shop now. Sorry that I totally cropped you out there, David. But you know what? We had
like Stadium Mustard. He was like waving around the mustard bottle. I love it.
That's okay. I'm a big fan of mustard. So I'm happy to be replaced by Stadium Mustard.
So you bring up a good point when you said about especially when you haven't been lifting those kind of muscles, you have to get as much strength and as much muscle built back up right around the knee and all those areas that you didn't work out because you were basically, it was isolated and had to have surgery on it, right? So you're right, that is very interesting in that case. But I it was wild when I saw that. I thought it was a reclip, a rerun from last year, and I'm like, right. Oh my God, what is he doing? Like, he's scaring me right now. I just want to put you in like a little bubble wrap and just put you out there, week whatever. So here's my guess. Hypothetical, I think based on what I saw week 4. That's just my gut. Ali, what do you think based on what you saw? Where does that put you?
I have no idea. I mean, like, truly and honestly, I know that's not a good answer. It's not a funny answer. It's not good for podcasting. But like, I have no idea. I think it's crazy. It was totally kind of startling. But I don't know. I'm just kind of enjoying the ride, really. Like, I think it's a lot of fun to see the progression. And, if anybody on this team is going to be doing superhuman things, I think every fan, every player in that locker room is going to say the same person, right? They know that Nick Chubb is going to be that guy doing just superhuman crazy things, and like we're seeing it. So I'm just kind of enjoying it. Obviously, I'm not enjoying the fact that he was hurt, but just to see the greatness off the field. He's elite in everything that he does, and kind of that Mamba mentality, if you will, in every aspect of his life. That we as fans see. It's really unique to be able to see a player. Obviously a Browns player that we all love so much, but just an athlete in general to be able to do what he's doing. So I'm optimistic that this is going to be a sooner rather than later thing. But of course, as a fan of this team and of the player, you don't want it to be too soon to risk any other kind of injury.
Well, I was going to say, Ali, the first time I ever met you in Cleveland for our event, I'll never forget, you were wearing your Nick Chubb jersey. I don't know if you remember that, but you were wearing your Nick Chubb jersey. Does she still own that? Of course she does, David. Of course she still has that jersey.
Of course she does.
Of course she does. But one thing I was going to say, just made me think of it, Dustin, when you're saying like you see him squatting all that weight and it scares you. Just keep in mind, like ACLs don't tear doing squats. ACLs don't tear weightlifting.
Okay, good.
An ACL tear occurs as typically as a non-contact injury, some sort of pivoting injury where someone plants and makes a cut and their knee goes inward and their foot goes outward. And there's a little bit of rotation with it too. That's the most common way we see it. Basketball, soccer, football. Obviously his was a little different because it happened when someone hit his knee, but his foot was planted and his knee was hit from the outside and it bent back towards itself. And so that's the same mechanism as you would have with a non-contact injury where your foot gets stuck in the ground and your body keeps going. So the mechanism for how an ACL tears is not what happens or the movement that happens during a squatting motion. And so as long as he keeps proper form, like you got nothing to worry about the ACL. If it's holding up, it's not going to give out when he's doing that.
Yeah, it's just a superhuman. It reminds me a lot of Adrian Peterson, honestly, what he was able to do and come back from that nobody kind of believed it could do. And here's the truth, people. 85% Nick Chubb is better than 100% in the league, period. So, I mean, even if he doesn't come back at full, we all know how great he is, what he can do. And 85% Nick Chubb is better than pretty much everybody else in the league. So,
yeah, I agree with that. Like, I don't even think that's hyperbole, honestly. I think, yes, there are a handful of guys that are, elite running backs in the league and they are a tier of their own or they're their own player. But I mean, yeah, let's just say even say 75 to 80% of Nick Chubb is going to be your better than average running back in the league. I think it's just goes to the appreciation that us fans need to have, when you're watching this player both on and off the field. So I don't know. Let's turn it over, within the division. I want to talk a little bit more about Joe Burrow. David, I know last week we kind of scratched the surface there on the progress of Joe Burrow. I just want to kind of unpack that a little bit more today, because I really think that the Bengals lost a little bit of their magic. And I don't really know why I feel that way. They didn't lose a ton of talent. It's just I don't think they're going to be as good as they have been. And I think a lot of that does depend on the status of Joe Burrow. It wasn't like a Deshaun Watson injury where you just get a surgery and you're good to go. Yes, obviously, it required some surgery and required a lot of therapy and whatnot, but it's a little bit more of a difficult injury. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Hi, Bam.
Yeah. Hello.
I can hear it.
I can hear it.
Okay, you clearly must know this person that I don't know.
Yeah, it's my grandparents.
Oh, hello, grandparents.
Oh, that's funny.
Love it.
Yes. So I saw a tweet earlier, and I brought it up to Ali, and just more about his injury and kind of why it's so hard to predict how he's going to recover and what he's going to be after this. But just on Twitter, again, in November, he tore his scapholunate ligament, which is the ligament that holds two of the wrist bones together, and it doesn't have a very good blood supply. And so it has to be either repaired or reconstructed. And then even with a perfect surgery, we know that a couple of years down the road, people who have this injury have instability in their wrists that develops and ultimately arthritis. And I really think that like the optimistic outcome or the optimistic look for people with this surgery is 80% of normal strength and range of motion in the wrist. we talked about it before, that dart throw is motion, where you bring your wrist back and then forward, and that's how you throw a football. And that's similar to throwing a dart, and that's how you get that little bit of that whatever you want to call it at the end of your throw. Yeah, the zip on the throw, the spin, the mustard, the stadium mustard, whatever you want to call it. That's how you get that little extra oomph on it. I mean, like, think about, like, if Brett Favre had an injury like that, the man who's known to throw like absolute rockets at people. It seriously can affect the way that someone plays the game. Now, he's an NFL athlete, and just like Nick Chubb, he's got all the resources available to him, and he's made it here for a reason. And so he can find ways to continue playing, and he may have to adapt his game a little bit. It may change the way he throws it. Maybe we're not going to be seeing super tight throws in the tight, narrow windows with little room to go. It may be more dumping it off, swing passes, stuff that's easier to get to. And we may see that his strength isn't as great either. And so being able to throw, a 40 or 50-yard bomb down the field may not be as likely. And so he's still the athlete that he has been. And he's still the quarterback, and he still has the brain that he has, but it's just his wrist is, I think, going to have an impact on the way he throws the ball. And so we just have to see how he kind of manages and adapts. And again, just like Chubb, it seems like he's pretty much had his way, or everything's gone his way in his recovery. He was throwing in mid-May, right on par with the OTAs, and so he didn't have any setbacks or delays. And so we'll see how things go as we start getting the training camp. But again, there's no news in the last 2 months that I can really say that's made me think one way or the other. That's funny. That's a man on the ball. But so there's no news to really say, like, oh yeah, he's actually like way ahead of the curve, or he's going to be great. But it is just, as you alluded to, Ali, it's a different injury than Deshaun. This is a stability issue. This is not too different than like a labral tear in the shoulder, where it's an actual stability problem and there's ligaments or soft tissue that was torn. Deshaun's is all bone. You get bone to heal, you're good to go. No big issue there. But this is not just a bony injury. And so I'm really, really intrigued by him. I'm certainly intrigued by Nick Chubb, but we've seen Nick Chubb recover from a similar injury already. This one with Joe Burrow, we've never seen this in an NFL quarterback, and we don't know what to expect. And so it's very intriguing to me, and I can't wait to see just what he can do this season and how far he can get, and if he is, still 80% of the player that he was, or if it's even worse than that. So, I hope this isn't boring or redundant for folks, but it's very, very interesting from my standpoint and from a medical standpoint to see, like, or to anticipate what he's going to end up being able to do. Oh no,
David, let me ask you this. You bring up an interesting point there. So do you think the Bengals will have to change up the offense a little bit? I mean, you brought up a good point. Does that make them have to pivot a little bit in the offseason and change up the offense to be more cater to what Joe Burrow needs based on his skill set, based on his strength and abilities? I mean, Ali, that could be a possibility.
I mean, that's a real thing, right? And you already know the turmoil that's going down there in Cincinnati, where if Jamar Chase doesn't get X amount of targets a game, he kind of throws a little bit of a fit. And if Joe Burrow can't throw it more than 12 yards, I imagine a world where Jamar Chase is not a happy guy. So, look, I think that is a little bit extreme to say, they're going to have to totally change their playbook because we haven't seen him play. But I can totally see a world where that exists, where they do kind of shift their scheme a little bit to be a little bit more operating, behind the line of scrimmage, swing passes, jet sweeps, things like that. I mean, they have the talent to do it. And I don't think that would necessarily be a problem for them, but it certainly would be a limitation and a step back in the progression of the player that we all thought Joe Burrow was, and who we thought he was going to become. But I don't know. I don't know, David. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I know I kind of mentioned it just leading up to that conversation, and I like I said, I think if he truly is affected and his ability to throw deep, like downfield passes, or to really fit in the tight windows with not a lot of time is impacted. I think, the playbook may not change, but just like kind of their approach or their, I guess their scheme might change a little bit, and their almost like their script is going to be different because they need to get their players, their athletes, the ball quicker and in space, and let them do something with the ball afterwards rather than Joe doing it all with his arm. And we know that Joe can scramble and move around a little bit too. So, like I said, he's going to have to rely on some other skills of his potentially. But if he does have an issue with making tight throws and tight windows, like I said, jet sweeps are going to be a little bit more prominent. Maybe some bubble screens or some slants or just places where he can get rid of the ball a little bit quicker and doesn't have to worry about getting it downfield as fast. I mean, like you said, they have the talent around them still to do it. I mean, between Zach Moss and then the rookie Jermaine Burton, a little speedster, they could probably drop some cool plays for them. And so I think that's where I'm most intrigued by is, are they going to have to fundamentally change the way that they play offense in order to make it work? And is it going to impact Jamar Chase's output, and is he going to be very unhappy about that? So those things I'm really looking forward to this season.
Yeah.
Sorry, David, I was not laughing at you, but I was laughing.
Look at this one. Is Dustin in his spaceship? He is actually. He's getting ready to take off to the moon.
I can't wait to meet Patty in November. Like, she's gonna be a hoot.
Oh,
listen. I can just hear. I can hear Noof just laughing at himself with that one for sure.
Yeah. So you'll like this, Dustin. Bam and Noof, that's my grandparents. Patty is my grandmother. They have a golden doodle. His name is Baker.
I love golden doodles. There's one in my building.
Golden doodle. He's an all black golden doodle, and his name is Baker. And he actually just recently tore his ACL. So David was consulted for the ACL of Baker the dog. But yeah,
how does a dog tear an ACL?
He's a really big golden doodle, and he slipped and just
really kind of people.
But yeah, dogs can.
Non-contact injury.
Yeah, exactly.
There it is. So David, good point. So, and Alan, we've talked about this at length. I think the key to the Cincinnati Bengals this year, one key thing, keeping Joe Burrow upright and protected. I mean, that's been the biggest issue in Cincinnati is the offensive line was crap, and he ended up being out for a season because he just got shredded, and then he gets hurt here. I mean, it's like mass protection. I think you have to put around this guy because, I mean, if he gets, availability is your best ability, right? Like, I just feel like if he goes down again, he's young, but I mean, he's been injured, and that's a concern. That's a concern from a franchise standpoint. It has to be, and if it's not, they're just dumb because they should have. By the way, when they drafted Joe Burrow, the next freaking pick, and you said it, should be a left tackle, and they didn't do it. And you're like, what the hell are we doing? And then we all saw the consequences of that. He got knocked out of the season, right? So,
well, I mean, let's take it a step further, right? And their lack of just planning. We've seen kind of the turmoil and just the nonsense with the whole receiving situation, what they've done with T. Higgins, and just all of that. It's been weird, and that's kind of my feeling for why they've lost some of their magic. But also look at what they've done at the backup quarterback situation, and the answer to that is nothing. I mean, outside of this offseason, they haven't done anything. They still have Jake Browning as their backup, and while he was serviceable in some moments last season, it's not going to get it done. Look at what the Browns have done. I mean, I think it's a little ridiculous to have 15 quarterbacks on the roster, right? But I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, 16. But, they've obviously put such an emphasis in having good backup quarterback play. And I think Andrew Berry's been good at that, actually. When we go back to looking at Baker Mayfield, and, at the time they had Case Keenum, and that may have fallen under John Dorsey. But, nonetheless, they've really put an emphasis on the backup quarterback position, not just beefing up the offensive line, but also having a backup, contingency plan at quarterback. The Bengals haven't done that. And I think that if Joe Burrow gets hurt again this year, David, I think that could be really detrimental to his career.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's been injury riddled. I mean, since his times at Ohio State, and why he didn't get a chance to even take the starting job because of his hand injury back then. And so, he's just one of those guys who's unfortunately been injury prone. Whether that's due to his body or his offensive line, we don't know, but it's a combination of the two. And I absolutely think if this isn't the career ender, one more serious injury can absolutely do it. But we'll just have to see how he goes. But Fortunately, when you got a guy that goes by the name Rocky Lombardi on your roster as a fourth string quarterback, you probably don't have much to worry about.
All right. So speaking of quarterbacks, I like that we kind of went down a rabbit hole here. I'm going to go out on a limb. I think the Browns are going to carry 3 quarterbacks this year. I think Winston, obviously, Deshaun Watson, and Huntley are all going to be. And as weird as it sounds, I think DTR is the odd man out, or he's traded out. And let me tell you why. And I know this is crazy. This might be a hot take, because sometimes I have them. We all have them. That's why they're called hot takes. But because of the kickoff return, and every team in the National Football Leagues are looking for ways to fool their opponent, right? Because of the new kickoff rule. I think folks like Huntley bring a different dimension, right? You can find ways to put him in and make, find that skill set to work him into the offense. But I think the Browns carry 3 quarterbacks, Huntley being one of those, just because of his multi-skill set. And I think DTR is the odd man out. I do. And that is sad to say, because we just drafted him. But I think a team may want him because they may have a skill set and their quarterback may be similar to him as a backup position. But I don't think DTR is going to make the team.
All right. Okay. I want to talk about this, but we got to get sponsor read in real quick. Dustin, before we unpack this, and David, you're staying on. We're talking quarterbacks. Can you tell our listeners about City Barbecue? And there goes David again. He can't be seen.
That's right. Hey, you know what? You know what's better than David? Barbecue. No, I was kidding. Just kidding. I'm just having fun. No, City Barbecue, 7 locations in Northeast Ohio. I had the opportunity to go down to Medina and meet all the great folks there. They have locations in Strongsville, multiple locations there. They do the party packs. They do catering. But let me tell you, Allie, they got the brisket. They got sausage. They've got the macaroni. Anything you can imagine, homemade barbecue, they've got it. Allie, fun fact, you probably didn't know this. Maybe you did. City Barbecue started in Columbus, Ohio. That's right. Columbus, Ohio was their first location, City Barbecue was. And they have expanded to Cleveland and other states now. But it's a great place to get food. I've enjoyed it. Maybe we'll do a show from a City Barbecue soon. Who knows? Maybe we will as we do our road show. But City Barbecue, great, great barbecue. 7 locations in Northeast Ohio.
You know what their new slogan should be? It should be what James said here: smoke brisket, not meth. And that's true. That is true. That's
wise words to live by.
Yeah, it is. That's a good motto.
Or take off in a spaceship. There's other options.
Or that. Okay. All right. Let's that was stupid. Okay, let's talk quarterbacks. Dustin, you think DTR is the odd man out? I don't think that's crazy. I don't. I think what was crazy was having 4 quarterbacks to begin with, but I do think that the Browns will carry 3 quarterbacks on their roster at all times. I mean, we have learned some pretty difficult lessons in the past, let's say 4 years. I think it's a very real possibility that it's Deshaun, it's Jameis, and then is it Huntley or is it DTR? No, that's tough. That is really, really difficult. I mean, obviously you can risk, sending one down to the practice squad, but depending on what their contract status is, if they're able to be poached or not, it can get a little tricky. I like the idea of having, more quarterbacks than not because of the unfortunate situation last year. But this is it. I think that, there is no Joe Flacco this season. They're not going to go get, they could go get Ryan Tannehill, but what they're doing is bulking up this quarterback room to make sure that doesn't happen again. That even if 1, 2, and 3 goes down, they still have a number 4 that they can rely on. I mean, David, what do you think about this? I know we're kind of pivoting from medical now to football, but to talk about having 4 quarterbacks on a roster. If we had this conversation 2, 3 years ago, I'd say you are just out of your ever-loving mind. There's no way that any team in the National Football League is going to carry more than 2 on their active roster. And we're saying, there's a world where there's 4.
Yeah, and I mean, if there's any team that's going to do it, it's going to be the Browns after what they experienced last season. There's no question about it. Having to pull out all the stops and go sign a guy off the couch who was flying, economy with the rest of us.
Love it.
It only makes sense. And I think that they have space for it. I think that you can make room for it, and if you prioritize it, you can make it happen on the roster itself. And I agree. I think that sounds like the right pecking order. We know Jameis has proven himself. He can be a starter in this league if he has to be, but he's a really great backup. And he's just a fun, like, locker room energy guy to have
I
around.
love him.
And he's immediately embraced Cleveland and the city and the team. And, like, that's something you want from your backup. You want buy-in. And so not only proving himself to be a sturdy, hardy player in the NFL, somebody who can take the hits and take the punches and still keep going, but also has a short memory and isn't afraid to sling it. I mean, you can't ask for much more in a backup quarterback like that. And then, like you alluded to, Dustin, where are they going to, throw Huntley around in some different positions and get creative with returns? I don't know, but certainly that can help fill the roster spot by, when you have a third quarterback active, dance with them in some other areas. I don't know. I think it's risky for sure, but I definitely don't think it's unrealistic to have 3 quarterbacks. 4 would be insane. And you're right. I think, unfortunately, DTR will not make the team, and he's going to get picked up by somebody else. He's not going to make the practice squad. I feel like somebody else will see some value or benefit in him, but I think we've been surprised before, where guys end up clearing waivers and they can stick with the organization. But ultimately, I don't think it's out of question at all or unrealistic to expect them to have 3 quarterbacks on the roster moving into the season.
Well, we just talked about last week, when you have a good team, you're going to be disappointed when some of your fan favorites are let go or traded or whatever. You can't expect every drafted asset to be a contributor, long term. So if that is the case and they say, hey, Tyler Huntley is the better quarterback, yeah, you go with Tyler Huntley. Like it's pretty clear. It's just kind of a weird thing to grasp as a Browns fan, where just a couple of years ago, you had undrafted free agents making significant impact on this team. Now we still do, right? That's not a knock at our guys like Ronnie Hickman, D'Anthony Bell, anything like that. But we were counting on those guys to come in consistently and make an impact. So it's kind of weird to shift from that mindset to where we are now, where it's possible that DTR is not on this roster as we approach the season.
Couple things I want to throw at both of you, and I'm not sure if you guys caught this today, but it made buzz in the media. One, this is from back, but when I interviewed Njoku and he had all the media there, and they asked, what's the playbook going to look like this year with Dorsey and stuff? And he looked like he wanted to say something, and then he knew he'd get in a lot of trouble. He goes, spicy. That's all I'm going to say. So that's interesting that he already knows some things are being changed up on the offense. Second, 92.3, the fan this morning with Ken Carman and Anthony Lima, a fan got to ask a question, and Ken Carman, you can tell Anthony Lima, we're not ready for this fan, but this fan won an interview and to sit in studio with those guys and ask Kevin Stefanski a question. And he literally came with a bullet at Stefanski, and he said, Coach, I just got one question. Who's calling the plays this year? Just tell me right now. And Ken Carman and Anthony Lima go, whoa, we did not know he was going to answer that question. But he literally says, hey, I'm getting that question in a week, and I will have a definitive answer for you. And so that caused a little bit of stir with Dorsey, and everybody's like, Kevin should give up the play calling. Let's just take the hot take there, guys. What do you think? Do you think Ken Dorsey is taking more of the playbook? And is there something to be said here in a week? I'm just curious what you guys think. Is it just hot air, or is there something really coming down?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. One, it's an important question. And I think a lot of fans have asked that. Now, I've always kind of leaned into Stefanski's play calling. I think most of the time he's a great play caller. Now, there are some inexcusable play calls that make you think the other. So I'll say I'm kind of in the middle with it. But also I think it's a good question for right now because there is nothing else to talk about. But when we look at where this offense is going and the talent that they have, and Stefanski coming off of Coach of the Year, yeah, I definitely can anticipate Stefanski making that call and saying, hey, in a week or 2 weeks or whenever he decides to make that announcement, it's going to be Dorsey. He's going to be the play caller of this team. I need to step into more of a CEO type of role, which I think he does. When you've got too much going on, we've seen it last year where something emotional would happen on the field or a ridiculous penalty would happen, he wouldn't. Now, we weren't there, just based off of what we saw, on TV. He'd kind of acknowledge it, put his head back down in the playbook, and get back at it. Now, that can get ugly. So, yes, it's probably likely that he is going to turn that over, but David, like the Buckeyes, that's a pretty big thing for the head coach to kind of relinquish.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the major college and pro teams of Central and Northeast Ohio are kind of living parallel lives with the head coach kind of wavering between being just the play caller and head coach or being the CEO. And I think it takes a special coach to be able to do both things. There's not a lot out there that do it and have success. I mean, you think of like Andy Reid, and like he's one of the first that come to mind, but like there aren't many others where they're the ones calling the offense and it is successful and happening. Right. And so it can happen in the right situation, but I think we've seen that, while he has a very creative mind and creative playbook, I think that it can become too much at times. And so I think it makes total sense. I'm pumped that Ryan Day gave that up for Ohio State, and that they're letting Chip Kelly come in and take the reins there. And I think it's only going to make Ohio State better. And I think every team's different. Every team has a specific need. And I think the Browns may have that same thing too. I mean, I'm not terribly familiar with Ken Dorsey's offense. I mean, he came from Buffalo, which I don't know if I would call Buffalo a spicy offense, but I mean, maybe it was. I didn't follow them very closely. And so certainly he knows his way around the ball, and he knows his way around an offense. And he knows what it's like to lose in Ohio or against an Ohio team back in 2002. But I'm excited to see what he brings to it. I think he can definitely mix things up and shake things up, and the athletes are there. We've talked about it. Ad nauseum. Like, we have these guys, we need to get them the ball, but we also feel like you can't get too cute about it. There's been plenty of times where Kevin tried to get a little too cute, or like do something that just didn't make sense, or it's almost like he put the play in the wrong sequence. He's like, he just kind of interjected it, and it didn't seem like the right time or place for it. And so maybe bringing in another pretty high octane offensive mind will help, sort that out in a way. I don't know. I'm excited to see how it goes, though.
It is interesting because I think when you bring in someone like Dorsey, right? At the end of the day, Kevin Stefanski has final call. He can override whatever the play call is, right? That's what the head coach can do. That's why he's the CEO, right? He has final call on the play. He can be like, "Hey, Ken, great play. Not going to do that. I see something over here that maybe you can't see from the press box. Going to do this," right? Mm-hmm. But my question is, as we pivot and we're kind of going in this coach's space, where do you see Mike Vrabel's role with this team? I think this is one of the things in the media, I'm just going to put out there, is not being talked about. The fact that we have Mike Vrabel in that room talking to these players, interjecting with these coaches. Like, I mean, you've got some big time brain trust right now with, those guys all in that room. I think it's something that's not being talked about in the media. And I think could be kind of like a Cleveland secret weapon, like having two head coaches. And Mike Vrabel doesn't have that kind of I'm better than anybody else kind of person, right? That's just not who he's wired as. I mean, what do you think that role is going to look like? Well, I'll ask Ali and then David. What do you think that role is for Mike as we go into the season? I know he's a consultant and all those things, but he's going to be on the field. He's going to be giving his 2 cents. I'm just curious what you guys think.
I don't know what his role is, but I can say this with, confidence. I think it's nothing but positive, right? It is obviously only going to help this team to have, somebody like Mike Vrabel in the room, and not only on the field, on game day, but just in those coaches meetings, in the position group meetings, just having the input there. And, Kevin Stefanski, awesome. But having somebody that's not necessarily a position coach, but has also played the game at a very high level for some very good teams, and then goes on to coach some very good teams. I think it's going to be a positive influence. It's hard to say because we don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what the status of his role is and like exactly what he's going to be doing. But I'm excited that we have him nonetheless.
I mean, when it comes to scheme and what the actual offense and defense are going to look like, I don't know what kind of impact he's going to have. And if he's, involved in those decisions very much, but I mean, as much he was described as and is a player's coach. I mean, he's a guy who played the game at a high level, at a high position and won Super Bowl, scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl, which is crazy enough to think about as a defensive player getting a pass from Tom Brady. But he's an energy guy. He's a player's coach, and so having that on the sideline just to kind of bridge the gap between Stefanski and the guys, I think is a really important piece. Because I don't think we would describe Stefanski as a player's coach like through and through, as pure as like you think of someone like Dan Campbell or other head coaches in that vein. But Vrabel is going to be that guy that is connecting with the guys, but also like knows how to lay down the hammer if he needs to, and he's going to be able to bridge a gap and just help make a deeper connection. And I think chemistry is so important, as we've seen with teams. Certainly they're professionals. At the end of the day, they're paid to win. They're paid to play the game. But chemistry is so important in these sports because that's why it's so hard to repeat as champions, and it's impossible to repeat because you get complacent, you get content. And so having him there and his presence, I think, is going to be a huge benefit for the locker room. And he definitely brings, a different mindset to the defensive side of things and can, inject his philosophy to whatever I guess they will allow him to do it. But it's not in any official capacity from that standpoint. So, his description makes it sound more like a player's hire, but he's definitely going to be involved on both sides of the sideline for sure.
Yeah. Real quick, Dustin, just want to tell you about our friends over at Hartville Flea Market. Head down to Hartville, check out their indoor shops. They've got over 3 acres of indoor shopping, over 50 unique shops, antiques, treasures. By the way, it's fully heated and air conditioned. So doesn't matter what time of year you go, you are covered. You've got produce, meat, cheese, coffee, pretty much anything and everything that you could possibly need. And then head outside where they have been open since 1939 with over 12 acres of outdoor vendor space, over 1,000 vendors. They are open Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays year round. So be sure to head down to Hartville and check them out.
Ali, guess who was down there today doing his auction for a lot of very unique pieces throughout his entire life? William Shatner was there getting rid of his clothing and some of his stuff from like TJ Hooker and some of all the different things that by the way, William Shatner, didn't know this until I did some more research. He's in his 90s and he's all there. Like all there. Like if we can live to be like William Shatner, like Godspeed. But that was a Star Trek reference there.
Real quick, Dustin, let me turn it over to you for our friends over at 5 Iron.
By the way, guys, had a great evening over at 5 Iron last Wednesday. I mean, how fun was that we got a bunch of the Here We Go Brownies fans to come out and enjoy a night of golf. Hey, we're probably going to be there again soon, doing some fun stuff, working on my horrible golf game over there. My swing is horrible, but I got to get better. But here's the cool thing, guys. If you use the code Brownie40, that's right, Brownie, BROWNIE 40 code is applicable to use on simulator rentals, right? So if you and your friends are in Cleveland, are you coming to Cleveland? Are you coming and taking in some Guardians games? Are you coming this, football season for a game? It's right downtown Cleveland on Euclid Avenue, right close to all the hotels and all the hospitality that Cleveland has to offer. Use code Brownie40, that's BROWNIE 40 to get 40% off golf simulator. How cool is that? Almost half off when you walk through the door. You get half off. We'll put it in the comments as well. But who doesn't want half off going in? That's pretty awesome.
Pretty cool. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about, Brandon Ayuk. 49ers have a situation on their hands where really the only NFL news this time of year, which is simply crazy, but that is the case. Brandon Ayuk formally requests a trade from the 49ers. I kind of want to talk, best landing spots. I know that a lot of Browns fans were saying, hey, send Amari and a third over to San Francisco. And, maybe we can talk about that next week if nothing happens until then. I don't know that we'll necessarily have the time for it tonight. But I just want to talk some good landing spots. I think that there's a couple of really fun ones for Brandon. I would hate for him to go to any of our rivals because I think that's a good fit for him personally. But I'll kick it off. Let's go kind of around the room here. Say kind of your best landing spot for Brandon Ayuk. We'll start with David.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. I'm sorry. No, it's the calculator. She found it in the basket. Can I? Okay. So best landing spot. We talked about this the other day, and there's some really fun ones, some really scary ones, and some that are very intriguing. I would say overall, to meet a team's need and for him to satisfy kind of his, itch to keep going and being like a number one receiver, I think the Chiefs make perfect sense. As much as I don't want him to go there because it's just going to complete that roster, I think it makes a ton of sense. They don't have a wide receiver one that can do anything. They need that, especially after after getting rid of Tyreek Hill. They've pieced it together and they've found success with it, obviously. But you want to talk about finding a way to repeat as champions or three-peat as champions. That's the best spot for him to go in the league from both his standpoint and the team standpoint. Do any of us want it? Absolutely not. And it's scary, and we can all just kind of, look forward to 2025 if that happens. But that's kind of my first thought in terms of like how both parties would benefit the most.
Yeah. Dustin, what do you think? Who's your best fit for Brandon Knight?
I don't know if it's the best fit, but I think it might be a unique fit. Let me ask you this. Do you think he gets traded? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, how about this one? The Los Angeles Chargers with Harbaugh.
Yeah, I think it's a great fit.
I think that would be a great fit. He was a very respected coach, a new scenery for not only him, but a new coach to build that relationship. I like the Chargers. I don't know. And maybe that helps them get to a playoff wild card. I don't know. I looked around the league and I'm like, man, I could see him not leaving the state of California and going right down to
I mean, their number one receiver right now is Quentin Johnston. I mean, we know the struggles that he had. Then they've got Josh Palmer, then Ladd McConkey. Yeah, they need a receiver. And I mean, they still have Justin Herbert, obviously. And I think, if they want a shot, and I think they have one, by the way. Like, I think that they're kind of an underrated team. They're going to be a decently competitive team this year. I think that makes a lot of sense. For me, I think my number one fit for Brandon Ayuk is the Bills. They're another team that they need a receiver, kind of in a bad way, with what they had going on, with Diggs. Yes, they've got Curtis Samuel. They've got Khalil Shakir, and they've got Keon Coleman, the rookie, who I think is going to be good. I think he's going to be very good, but they need kind of help now. I think that would make a lot of sense for Brandon Ayuk, because a lot of us, here on the East Coast, we don't know a lot about Brandon Ayuk. He played, where did he play college football? I mean, he was on the West Coast. We didn't see a lot of him. And then Arizona State. Yeah, that sounds about right. And then, with the Niners, we don't see a lot of Brandon Ayuk, but I'll tell you this, he's a very good receiver, like a very good young receiver. So whoever gets him is getting a high-end talent, because technically he was receiver one for the Niners. Now they did some kind of unique things with Debo and, who technically was 1 and 2, but technically speaking on paper, he was receiver one. Really, really good receiver. So I don't know. I think possibly Buffalo. All right, Dustin, turn it over to you real quick for our friends over at True Fan Travel.
Yeah, guys, True Fan Travel. Got a big Vegas trip coming up. Browns, their first trip to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. Get on that charter flight. Join me with Josh Cribbs as we go to Las Vegas, Nevada. It's going to be a lot of fun. If that doesn't fit your needs, go to New Orleans away with Kevin Mack. And by the way, maybe I'm breaking some news that maybe I shouldn't. Go to the Washington Commanders game. I hear Top Dog might be the guy that's going to be taking you there. But anyway, enjoy True Fan Travel. Book those trips. Get all-inclusive, or take the charter from Cleveland for the Las Vegas trip. Do that at truefantravel.com. That's truefantravel.com to book your trip today. A lot of fun. Cool folks. They're out of Philadelphia. They're great people. So,
David, you're going to like this one. James Frank says, I'd rather him go to the Lions. Him opposite Amon-Ra would be crazy. He'd always look great in brown and orange. Let's get Cooper signed. Ayuk is a dog. I'd take him over Debo any day. I agree with that. I think Ayuk to the Lions, that's terrifying. That is terrifying.
No, I was trying my best to not be a homer in that situation, but of course, like Ayuk to the Lions would be unbelievable. And I saw there was someone who was kind of going over all the possible landing spots on Twitter for Brandon Ayuk, and they mentioned like fantasy death would be if he landed with the Raiders. Fantasy heaven is if he went to the Chiefs. Cowboys means they're all going all in, and he said for the Lions that just is like the league has been like the league has been warned if he goes to the Lions. Like, look out, like, don't mess with the Lions with that offense. It'd be unbelievable. There's been no rumblings or rumors of it even like possibly happening, but you never know what Dan Campbell's working behind the scenes there.
No, you really don't. All right, David, I know we've kept you on like way longer than what we normally do, but we'll get you off your side.
It's been good. It's been good.
Great, especially on the shows where we need help.
Grandma Patty came in with the spaceship and the BAM. Grandma Patty came in with all the BAM and it's good stuff.
But I know, I can hear my girl Birdie over there, and David's got
She needs some daddy love. She needs some daddy love.
She does. Yeah, so, David, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me, as always.
Go Browns, David.
Go Browns.
A couple other things that we need to get to, Dustin. But before we do that, here's a quick video ad from our friends, our newest friends.
Kind of cool being back where my hometown is, you know, gives me a little refresher when I was young, reminds me why I'm doing it, you know. I think it's a little more motivating than usual, actually, for once. I move different than most people. I can feel it, I can see it. It's not all about, you know, who can do mitts better, etc. I can feel for it. This is just something that has always come natural to me. This is all I do. You know, I've morphed to know as much as I can about this craft, you know, mentally and physically and everything. But before I even started it, I knew I understood combat a little better than the average person, I like to think. Because once I get a hold of somebody or I hit them, they feel the difference.
Those are our newest friends over at Cage Thunder MMA. Pretty cool. That's got me all fired up.
Allie's ready. Allie's Cage Thunder, biggest MMA fight in Cleveland down at the Jacobs Pavilion, August 17th. Go get your tickets at cagethundermma.com. Go get your tickets. Get that. It's me. Several thousand people, Allie, in the flats. Allie, have you been down in the flats to see the Jacobs Pavilion? Have you been down around that area?
No, not that area.
Okay, so what's very cool, it's open air kind of amphitheater where they do concerts, they do MMA, they do all kinds of things. There was some country concerts there, but it's kind of cool. It's a very cool venue. Seats about 6,000 to 7,000, so it's a lot of fun for an outdoor venue right down. It's literally on the Cuyahoga River. It goes into Lake Erie. Very cool. But a lot of fun. Looking forward to being there and covering that. And being a part of that for August 17th. With that, though, really. I forgot to mention this to you. Well, you know about this, but August 18th, the Here We Go Brownies, I will be on location at the Captains, the minor league team for the Guardians. It'll be a night. There'll be some information put out this week or this weekend. We got a suite there to invite 40 people to come out to the Captains game, watch some baseball. I'm a little nervous, Allie. I get to throw out the first pitch at this Captains game, and it's the 60th anniversary of the Cleveland Browns. Don't screw it up, as one would say. Don't mess it up, right? Because you're going to be in front of a lot of people. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Ray, our good friend Ray, is going to be there with all of his memorabilia from that 60th anniversary. Allie, I don't know if I've told you this. The stuff that's in Ray's house blows my mind. You ready for this? This is going to shock you. Ray has Ernie Davis's original contract with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, the memorabilia he has blows me away. And quite honestly, the reason he got it is because we have an evil, evil owner that left Cleveland and didn't care about the history and tradition. And thank God there were people like Ray and others that cared about the tradition of the Cleveland Browns and the history because they went to Baltimore. And they were kind of just washing their hands of what was that. But, I mean, we all know how influential Ernie Davis was, for instance, and what he did. And his career was cut way short. Many thought he'd be as good as Jim Brown or better. I mean, we'll never know, right? But just some of the cool stuff. But that'll be fun. So, guys, we'll put out a contest to come join us, hang out in the suite. It'll be a lot of fun, but that's August 18th. So big weekend, August 17th with the Cage Thunder, August 18th with the Here You Go Brownies out at the East Lake Captains.
Yeah.
Lake State Captains.
And some Browns news that we didn't get to just yet. Some exciting news that the Browns did sign Dustin Hopkins to a 3-year extension.
Yes.
Really excited. Really excited about that. I mean, when we made the trade for Dustin Hopkins last year, I know everybody was like, let's see how this goes, I guess. And it was probably it was the best offseason acquisition that Andrew Berry did last year. So really excited to see them, get Dustin here for the next few years.
Top 5 paid kicker in the league. I mean, he made some headlines with the actual payment that they paid him, $5 million and change over 3 years. So I mean, he's going to be here. He kind of warmed my heart. I don't know if you saw this, Ali, but he made a comment. He goes, "Hey, I really appreciate that Cleveland embraced me as the adopted son." I'm like, "Hey, I've used that line. I like that. The adopted son. You let me come to Cleveland and be a part of the community here." But yeah, I mean, that's a big it's a big contract. I mean, it is a big contract. I mean, it is for a kicker, right? That's a lot. And we didn't get into this. JOK, right? Yeah. JOK, there's rumblings out there that there's a little bit of distance between where they're at, but JOK clearly wanting some money and get paid. And quite honestly, he deserves it. I mean,
definitely.
His pay. Well, and here's the truth. The Browns do pay their players. I mean, we could say a lot of things about this Browns team in the past, but I don't think there's any player that comes to Cleveland and says they're cheap, they don't value the position, and they don't. Now, I'm not saying Andrew's not a little shrewd and tries to get the most value out of a player. Sure. Like every GM should, right? That's his job to get the best ROI on what he's investing in. But at the end of the day, yes, I think JOK should be re-signed long-term. I think he's a great player. I think we got him at a great value where he was in the draft. Ali and, we were both there when that happened in 2021 when we got him. And I just think it's a great thing. But, man, should I be worried or not, Al? Let me ask you this. Should I be worried or should I just pump the brakes and just calm down on the more and more time that spans with Amari Cooper not being signed?
No.
By the way, I saw a comment someone said but I didn't see any sources that have said Amari Cooper has re-signed with the Browns. But
no, nothing about that yet. I'm not nervous yet. Maybe it's just because I do have a lot of faith in this front office and getting something done, right? Whether it's Amari Cooper or better. I don't think we take a step back. And I think that's kind of the reason for my nerves. I don't think we just get a worse player than what Amari Cooper is. I think it's Amari or better. And that's a little bit reassuring to me.
Sure.
No, I'm not nervous yet. Now, in 2 weeks, we'll probably have a different conversation. But as it currently stands right here on, July 18th, no, I think we're okay. And this is just one of those summertime things. And Andrew Berry will work it out. I like this one. How do I start preparing my girl for my insanity this football season? We didn't live together last year. She's going to think I'm crazy. James, here's my advice. Yeah, she's going to think you're crazy. Embrace that. You've got to embrace the craziness. That's okay. Show your passion, show who you are, but involve her. That would be my suggestion is do it, but involve her. And that doesn't necessarily mean she has to sit down and watch every single snap, but, involve her and, maybe have tradition out of it. Maybe every Sunday you make chili beforehand or you order pizza from the same place every single time. Start traditions there. It's a lot of fun when you can start to incorporate your significant other into your shared passions. David, he's a Lions fan. And, I at first okay, are we going to clash at all? No, it was the easiest transition because we kind of built around it. And
it's two teams that have suffered for 70 years. It was like a match made in heaven.
No, when you have a different interest, so what we do, one of our traditions is, I'm not a video gamer at all, but we play Madden every week. So we'll play the Browns game for that week, and we'll play the Lions game for that week. So when we play the Browns, I'm the Browns, and he'll be whoever we're playing, and then vice versa. So that's been a lot of fun, and I don't know much about Madden, but that's been a really fun tradition just to add another layer of excitement.
Okay, so James, I'm gonna I'm going to put Ali out on a limb here. This will be fun. So here's some advice I'll give you from a male's perspective versus the female's perspective. If she's there still with you, hanging tough by the bye week, she's a keeper. She's a keeper if she's there by the bye week, because that means she's withheld an entire half a season by your side, embraced your football team, love, hangs out with you, thick and thin. She's loyal, right? We're Browns fans. We're loyal. So if she makes it through half of a season, I think you're golden. Now, here's a question for Ali. It was really easy to match up David being a Lions fan with a Browns fan because there's a lot of, hey, we can agree on it's been a lot of suffering. Ali, first date. I wish David was still on here. First date. What happens if you sat down and David said, hey, I'm a big Lions fan, but I absolutely love the blue and yellow, and I rah for the Michigan Wolverines?
We wouldn't be here today.
I thought that would be the answer.
Be here, right, David? There you go. You come to
houses can be divided, right? I mean, that's not a bad thing. But I know how much you love the Ohio State Buckeyes, and I can't imagine a person next to you like, because full disclosure, I don't know if James is still watching, but I watched Ali and I remember the bar we went to, and we watched that Michigan Ohio State game, and you looked miserable in that fourth quarter. Like I didn't even want to talk to you. Like I thought somebody had like taken your purse, stole your car.
What do you mean? It was worse than that. I would gladly give my purse away.
Right, but I'm just saying you were like, we can leave now. I am done. Like you were like physically and mentally, Ali was done. She had checked out because she saw what was clearly what we all saw. Michigan was pulling away in the game. But I just thought that was interesting. But what's James?
There you go. Hey, there you go, James. Just get her a jersey. Get her a couple of jerseys, and
that's a great idea.
Get her a couple of jerseys.
Hey,
James.
James.
Get 3 of them. Here's what you get 3 of them. You do like, let's just say like a brown Nick Chubb. You do a white Myles Garrett, and then do like an orange JOK, or David Njoku. There you go.
I got something better. Ali.
What do you got?
Go to 21fits, TWO1fits.com. Get her a Here We Go Brownies.
There you go.
Sweatshirt, T-shirt, or hat. And by the way, Ali doesn't even know about this, but she's going to wonder why this is. Use the code pallbearer. I seriously mean that. Pallbearer, just like a pallbearer you'll get 15 or 20% off. But go to 21fits.com. Look for Here We Go Brownies hats, T-shirts, hoodies, and hats, and a beanie. The beanie is legit beanie. But give her here's the thing, Ali. So you gotta fix her up right. Ali knows this. If you're gonna put me in the elements, you better bundle me up so you could get a nice Here We Go Brownies beanie. By the way, James, if you get something like that and you send a picture of it, I will buy you your next Here We Go Brownies thing from the website. If you buy anything for your girl on that website, because I'm so excited that you're embracing and bringing your girlfriend into the Browns space and expanding, I will buy you or her the next thing you want off the website. So go out there, look at it, 21fits.com, pick something out, then post on our page that you purchased it, right? Use that code pallbearer, and I will buy you the next thing, and we will get her all suited up for this football season.
There you go, James. That's a pretty good deal right there. That's a pretty good deal. All right, there you have it. Dustin, what else you got? Anything
Teresa's
else?
Pizza, baby. We got to talk about Teresa's Pizza.
Yes, we do.
So Teresa Pizza, guys, if you haven't gotten Teresa's Pizza, you got to go to Mayfield Heights or University Heights. By the way, great food, cater. They have amazing pizza. We were just talking about this in the office today, Ali. They have people love it, but it's a barbecue pizza. Very interesting. Yeah. What's really interesting about Teresa's Pizza, which is really cool, is all the toppings are underneath. So you get all the cheese on top. It's not messy. It's a smooth cheese layer. All the toppings are underneath, but they have all amazing flavors. Been around since 1969. By the way, you don't stick around since 1969 unless your pizza is really good. Different flavors. Teresa's Pizza is Mayfield Heights, University Heights, but go get it for your office catering, or just get it for your football weekend. Or if you're just lazy and you want to order pizza because you don't want to cook, there's another good reason.
There you go. There you have it. All right. Well, we went long, but
it was fun. Hey, by the way, guys, we were before we started the show tonight. We're like, hey, are we gonna have enough to talk about? And
no, I was like, I don't know what we're gonna talk about tonight, but we did it. We made it. But thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, Browns fans, go Browns.